Well, how do, folks? I'm Max Stevens, and I buy old records. I wish. That guy's amazing. Hello, everybody.
Everyone's doing this thread, the 10 records they listen to the most. I'm going to have to deal with some CDs because, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get everything that I wanted on vinyl. And I'm going to start right off the bat with the soundtrack to City of the Living Dead, aka The Gates of Hell by Fabio Frizzi. Beautiful soundtrack, has rich synthesizers and use of mellotron, especially vocal type mellotron tones. Kind of Pink Floydish at times in its mood. Really, really great soundtrack to a very sort of surreal, very excessive 80s horror classic. Tarkus was my first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album. That's probably why I fell most in love with it. It was my first exposure to progressive art rock and the possibilities of music, influencing me to want to be a musician. I've had at least 2 or 3 Blue Label Cotillion discs since I was 7 years old that I kind of put a hurtin' on over the years for their constant use and play. I've had it on 8-track tape before. I currently have it on CD as well as that picture disc, that Record Store Day picture disc. That's not one of the 5 box set. I don't have that set, unfortunately. But it is still to this day probably my number one favorite and most influential and most played album. Queen, A Night at the Opera. This is an incredible recording for its arranging, having the Bohemian Rhapsody on it, the Prophet's Song with its use of a loop kind of effect to build vocal harmonies at one point. Some 1920s influenced songs. It's just an incredible, far ahead of its time work of art, and I can't say enough about this album and how much I absolutely cherish every moment of it. It is a beautiful, beautiful record. And for anyone that's curious to know, I got the Walmart copy that's blue. It sounds really good though. It's half-speed mastered and not noisy at all. One of them that I got was kind of noisy. It wasn't the game. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it may have been jazz that had a little bit of crackle to it. But this one came out really nice. This is one of those German comps. Absolutely love this one. It has Al Kooper and Moby Grape and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and it jams all the way through. A really, really great late 60s, early 70s fuzz rock and art rock compilation. Wonderful album. One of several different color variants. This one, hold on. An insane mix of purple, red, and black. Sounds absolutely spectacular, even in the color variant. It's, again, a vintage record. It's from the early 1970s. Very nice quality. It's great to listen to throughout. There's not a bad song on it. Cherry 5. This is a more recent purple vinyl reissue on Chinivox. I also have a CD that was licensed from Chinivox through Mellow Records, I think. This is technically the best Goblin album to me, but not under the name Goblin. It is vocal. It is in English. There are influences that can be heard in it from Kansas to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's very edgy, very stylish. The Swan track from Tenebrae is on here, so there is some material on here that's way ahead of later release. Also, they did the Deep Red soundtrack technically after this, so there was quite a gap in between Tenebrae as a score and this album. Il Balletto di Bronzo's YS is one of the most incredible prog albums I've ever heard. I have no idea what the lyric content is. The entire thing was composed by Gianni Leone. He's usually just killing it on two different types of keyed instruments at a time, typically harpsichord and Hammond organ. It's very busy, very fuzz rock oriented, and very intense. Okay, what I have next is more than a concept album. It's a concept album that is a sequel. I love pretty much everything that King Diamond has done as a solo artist. Most of the Merciful Fate stuff too, although I find some of the themes in that to kind of get a little repetitive after a while and silly. But he's such an immense storyteller in his works that are under just his name. This is Conspiracy, probably the least interesting album cover because it's just his mug on there. But most of his albums had really great artwork. However, this is probably the strongest or one of the strongest albums for feel, for having songs that have a lot of different structure and speed and dynamics to them, and use of synthesizer and theatric types of sounds. It's very much got a compositional style akin to a soundtrack in places. Great album, intense storytelling. It's a sequel to his third studio LP, I think it was, Them. Them was either second or third. I'm not sure if it was that or Abigail that came first. But I'm a fan of all of them, so I don't really pay attention to the order in which they came out. I've had this album on cassette. I've had it on CD. I had it on a traditional LP. I still have the CD, and now I have this picture LP. So I'm very, very fond of it, and it gets regular play. And the dog is losing her mind. She sounds kind of like him right now. Okay, quick statement here. Doing 10 albums is really rough for me because there's so much stuff to love. I mean, if I was to go for it, I'd have to say, oh, what are the 100 that I have in regular rotation? Because that would be very diverse. We'd be including Triumvirate, Illusions on a Double Dimple, Pink Floyd, Animals, Borknagar, Damnation in a Day by Cradle of Filth. Let's see, there'd probably be a couple of Dimmu Borgir albums in the mix, and some Duke Ellington, and you name it. So it's pretty all over the place. The Moana soundtrack is definitely in there. Actually, so is Encanto. That's another one. So, all right, moving on. We got the CD out at the moment. I also have a picture LP, and I've had a traditional LP in the past. This one was a recent gift. I mentioned it in a prior video, but this is just a great album. I mean, it's easy jazz, I guess you could say. It's great beginner's jazz, but once it hooks itself into your brain, it's just a delicious album all the way through. It's like listening to Vincenzo Guaraldi. You know, you may not be able to easily knock the Charlie Brown element out of your head after years and years, but if you do and you just sit there and focus on the music, his music is just exquisite. And the same is true of this album. It has that kind of vibe about it. It's a really beautiful record from start to finish. And for the last two, I'm going a bit more modern and a bit more on the heavy side. This is Opeth, Heritage. Got my copy signed and still have the ticket stub from the tour. Basically, this album was kind of a breakout for them in a way, in that they moved wholly away from doing their regular metal thing into basically making a melodic prog album. And it's not the first one that was all melodic, no growled vocals, but it is, I think, the one that just stepped straight over into, you know, we've got influence from Goblin, from King Crimson, from all of these other things, and that's what we're going to show our influences from on this particular record. And it's just a fantastic, fantastic record. I love all Opeth, by the way. I like their early stuff all the way back to Orchid, when it was pretty much death metal with just short acoustic passages with clean vocals back and forth, on up to the most recent album, which I'm drawing a blank on the title, but it translates to "The Sting is in the Tail," and it's a great double LP. I have a picture disc of that. Every moment of that album is great, and it's recorded in both English and Swedish, so that's kind of cool. You can listen to it in two versions, kind of like you can a lot of the Italian prog stuff. Okay, this last one is really modern, but it goes a little deep for me. So I'm going to say that this record was kind of healing for me, because about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was coming away from a really bad situation, and I lost absolutely everything I owned. And at one point, I was just emotionally distraught. It was just, I was down to 120 pounds, no lie. Today, everything is happy and healthy, and the world, even on a bad day, it's a good day. Waking up is a good day, and I'm grateful for all that I have and everyone that's here. And I know what it is to crawl through a mile of shit and come out the other side being okay. That said, this album is kind of about that, and about the ups and downs of life. And it reflects that in its wide variety of tones. This is Devin Townsend's Empath. This is a double CD edition with a second disc with bonus tracks. He was basically told by the main guy, Nickelback, the labels are trying to push you into a corner and make you cut a record that's a specific genre, when your musical tastes and interests, just like your spirit and your being and your emotionality, are naturally kind of all over the place. So why isn't the label just gonna let you do you? Maybe you should just cut your own record on your own dime and then offer it to them, and they can take it or leave it. Well, it turned out to be probably one of his most successful albums, probably up there easily with Ziltoid or whatever. And the guy is brilliant. He's like Zappa. There's nothing he can't do. Case in point, there's a track on this album called Hear Me, which has elements that are black metal and death metal about it, and very technical, very fast, very harsh, very extreme. And it's immediately followed by a piece that's just orchestrations, and his beautiful, rich, theatrical vibrato vocal over the top sounds like something out of a Disney movie, a song called Why. And those types of transitions kind of fluctuate throughout the whole album. There's experimentation with myriad variety of genres of music on it, but it really is down to the core of what it is to, in his concept, be in the island of the mind, where you've got good things on one side of you and bad things on the other side of you, and they're just influencing you past, present, and future at all times, and how it is that you go through that and you survive that. And I think he said in an interview somewhere, just when you think that you're getting your teeth kicked in, basically, if you just keep pushing forward, when you surface, there's something beautiful waiting on the other side, and you're still alive. It's another day. And that's proven to be very, very true in my case. So that's one of my attachments to that album, is it's got all of this brilliant, incredible musical integrity that you can just sit there and pick apart and pick apart and pick apart and hear something new every single time you listen to it. But at the same time, outside of that busyness, there's this legitimate drama and purposed kind of storytelling going on in it that is just remarkable. And I'm very grateful to him, even though he would never know this, just as an artist, because it's meant so much to me, and it's helped me on my pathway to healing from some really rough stuff that I went through for a decade. That there was PTSD. You just don't recover, from certain things that are ongoing in your life for a while when they're negative. So coming away from that, this album is just, I don't know, it says a lot to me. So that's probably why, even though it's only a couple of years old, it's in a very heavy rotation for me still, and has been for a couple of years now. So Devin Townsend's Empath. If you haven't heard this album, definitely check it out. And Don't try to listen to it when you're busy doing other things. And don't give up on it when the first track starts hitting 300 BPM at a couple of moments, because there's some black metal influence in the percussion here and there. Stick with it and listen to the entire thing. It is a musical journey, and you'll be glad that you did. Well, that's 10. Check back in a week or so for a video on some more random records. See you real soon.